Hi, everybody. Thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel. And if you just happen to find me from scrolling around, I hope you'll hit that subscribe button and help me out. Let's talk a little bit about JD Vance, shall we? JD Vance is so closely associated with Project 2025 and all the horrors of the Trump administration that aren't just Trump personally, which is his own set of horrors. These other horrors are embodied in Project 2025, which most people didn't read or couldn't fully comprehend during the campaign season. And now we're finding out just how bad it is. So JD Vance is out there waiting in the wings for when Trump steps aside, pretends it's for health reasons, but it's really because Putin is done with them, and Elon Musk and Putin are now going to be probably doing more of the drip, drip, drip on Trump in the Epstein files. I think that's unavoidable. He is no longer useful to them on Ukraine. It was always a plan to have JD Vance. JD Vance is largely an unknown, but my friend Ron Fauché has written his column for the New Orleans paper. So, and he's been handicapping the Democratic candidates. And this week he talks about JD Vance, and I find this very interesting. He notes that there won't be an incumbent president in the 2028 race, but there will likely be a sitting vice president in the running. And of course, as we know, if you're a sitting vice president, you have the huge advantage in a primary. In fact, he probably won't even be primaried by any serious candidate. So JD Vance, who's only been a senator for a short time that no one knew, and as Ron Fauché notes, he says JD Vance's prospects begin and end with Donald Trump. This is true. Trump got him elected to the U.S. Senate with obviously the Peter Thiel money. And 2 years later, picked him to be his running mate. So he's basically the MAGA crown prince, as he says, and he's the nomination front runner. We've had lots of speculation, of course, that Trump would try and run for a third term. I think his health and the situation with Putin and Elon Musk clearly pushing him out will prevent that. He's looking for assurances and some kind of protection, of course. And then some days I think he wakes up in the morning and thinks, I'm Donald Trump. I can beat anybody. He thinks he could take on Putin. And of course he can't. He owes Putin everything. Donald Trump is president the first time and now because of Putin and solely for Ukraine. And again, he failed on Ukraine, did not know about the Zelensky upcoming drone strikes on the Russian planes inside Russia. So he has outlived his usefulness. So up next, JD Vance. Okay, what's this going to look like? So let's see. He's going to be the stronger nomination candidate, of course. I think they'll clear the field for him, of course. And he is largely unknown. He keeps changing his name. He's got a weird kind of background. He once compared Trump to Hitler. I hated Trump, was completely anti-Trump until it behooved him otherwise. So we know that he doesn't have this deep personal connection to Trump or to MAGA. JD Vance is about JD Vance, and he will do whatever Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Vladimir Putin want him to do. And I think that we have to be clear about that. That's where his loyalty lies, and that's where his future lies. So here's what we are looking at. If Trump is popular in 2028, Vance will proudly run on Trump's record. They will barrel forward with everything in 2025 openly. See, so far they've been kind of hiding it, claiming it didn't exist. Remember all that? Got a cloak and dagger because they knew if voters, even Republicans, maybe not hardcore MAGA cultists, but most Republican voters who didn't like Trump, but they weren't going to vote for a Democrat, particularly not a Black woman, these folks maybe didn't really care about Project 2025. They didn't know about it. Nobody was putting it in front of them. So they didn't care. So if Trump is popular in 2028, Vance will run on his record. All right. If Trump is unpopular, Vance is going to have a little bit of an uphill climb, and he's going to have to kind of do this from scratch. So, okay, so what do voters think of Vance? There are 3 polling numbers to watch, as Fauché notes. His rating among all voters, his rating among Republicans, and his rating among independents, which is really key. That third one is key. And before we get into these numbers, it's really important, I think, for us to say, oh, everybody hates JD Vance. If we start talking in our own bubble, that's what we start believing. Or if you look around the world, they hate JD Vance for good reason. But those aren't the numbers that matter. So the first number, which would tell him where he stands with the national electorate. The second number would be, can he win his party's nomination? Meaning, what do Republicans think of him? And the third, we're talking about independents. That provides clues as to strengths and weaknesses among potential swing voters. Those swing voters are incredibly important. As I say, close elections are won or lost in the margins. Those swing voters are often in those margins, and that's where we put most of our resources during a campaign, because we already know where the base is, and we already know where the other side's base is. You got to find swing voters or potential swing voters. All right, and that's where your time and effort and money go. So if you're getting all excited because you like some ad that some guys are putting on the internet to get you to open your wallets and give them money and make them, build their generational wealth, they know how to get you ginned up. But you know what? You're not the one that we need to be thinking about. So always I think we have to all think like strategists rather than base voters who need to be entertained or, get energized, particularly when that money you send those guys goes in their pockets. It's not going to elect Dems. And that's why we do not have a Democratic House majority, frankly. So let's take responsibility for our own gullibility and don't let it happen again. As I said, I think yesterday in the video, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me a third time, my God, let's just, hand it all over to MAGA, shall we? And to Putin. So, okay, here's what we're finding out. So what do voters think of Vance? All right. His rating, according to the average of 4 recent polls, is 42% favorable and 51% unfavorable. That's 9 points net negative. All right. Digging deeper, Republicans love JD Vance. He will sail to the nomination. Understand? He will sail to the nomination. They rate him 80% favorable to 11% unfavorable. So all of these other numbers, the world hates JD Vance. He's terrible with crowds. He's just a nothing burger. No one can understand why he's even there. It doesn't matter when it comes to getting the Republican nomination, particularly if at that time Trump is popular or somewhat popular or popular with Republicans. That will help JD Vance. And this is the thing that I've always been afraid of. I always wondered, could JD Vance hold that MAGA base? Well, maybe. I don't know. It depends. Is it a cult thing or is it just a favorable thing? So I don't have any numbers here on the passion associated with the numbers. Maybe if they know more about him, they won't like him. He's not Trump. So there's a lot. I'm talking now like a strategist, like, all right, what do we need to look for? Where do we need to dig deeper so that we can find those margins to play in? These are the types of questions you would ask. So he's got an 80% favorable, 11% unfavorable with Republicans. Does that mean there's passion involved, like they would die for him like they would for Trump? That's where I would spend the money and the time and the energy digging into those numbers to find out where the fault lines are. If they're just like, yeah, he's okay, I like him, I'll get my favorable. He hadn't done anything yet. See what I'm saying? And that's what we should be doing rather than hard hitting videos to get the base us energized on Twitter. That doesn't do it. Again, we're doing strategy here, not. So then you're looking at, okay, Democrats despise JD Vance. He rates to 4% favorable. Who are they? And 89% unfavorable among Democrats. That's not surprising. Independents, who often determine the winners in close elections, are less positive than negative. This is really important. They are 28% favorable to JD Vance and 53% unfavorable. We need to find out why and see if there's any crossover or something you can play in so that the 53% unfavorable among independents can bleed into maybe the soft 80% favorable he has with Republicans. Now he would get the nomination, but those would be the numbers that we're going to look at. I'm not a pollster. I have hired pollsters, worked with pollsters, been with, worked with them putting together the questions and then gone through the debriefing and the presentations. Just so you know, that's my exposure to some of this. But I am a strategist. So obviously, if you're somebody who is the chief consultant or the campaign manager, you're the one that's going to be hiring the pollsters and sitting through the debriefings to look at the numbers. So just by way of background, that's what I've done. All right. So an Emerson College poll conducted in late June found Vance leading the GOP nomination race with 46% of the vote. He was followed by Marco Rubio at 12%, Ron DeSantis 9%, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at 5%, and 8 of the prospects polled 2% or less. That, of course, can change a lot, especially in this weird, uncertain era. But again, remember, you still need those independents. And Trump always prided himself in being able to get some of those independents. So right now, JD Vance has a 28% favorable rate with independents and a 53% unfavorable. I'm bringing it back because I think you always have to keep those numbers front and center. So he would be the standard bearer, JD Vance. He apparently leads Mayor Pete Buttigieg, the former transportation secretary, by a single point going in. That is very, very interesting because we know Mayor Pete is formidable. Is the country ready for a gay president? I don't know. That's where we start digging into those numbers. You have to dig into the Republican numbers and the independent numbers. Democrats are fine. AOC, she's 44% to his 41. Okay. And there's no sense in going with the Kamala Harris numbers because she would trail Mayor Pete for the Dem nomination, but leads Vance 45 to 42. But she's not running. So while Vance is in the hunt, as Ron Fauché notes, the race starts close. That's what we need to be looking at. Should we assume that Trump is not going to be around at that point? We know he'd like to be. He'd like to cancel all elections, run again. But his health is bad. But his health has been bad for a while. He didn't care. If he's got a heartbeat, he might try to run. I think the way he stays out of this is when the Project 2025 folks, some of the money folks, let him know that they don't want to take a chance on him again, that they don't want to go through everything that we'd have to do. There's been so much disruption and chaos to ruin the country already. But again, I think this has to do with the oligarchs and Vladimir Putin, and they're done with him. So right now, we got to start looking, obviously, at 2026, but at 2028. If it looks too difficult for Vance, will they call off elections and install him then? Can Trump last till then? See, that's the thing we've talked about here before. I don't see how Trump can finish this term. I think he's got the serious dementia. He's had it for a while, but now he doesn't even care. Just putting it out there. I don't think he has anybody really helping him or being honest with him. Everybody hates him, even his own family. He's doing things that I think would make others be more than happy to help Putin and Elon Musk push him out. Firing people that give him accurate numbers. I mean, I think they just needed him to keep the seat warm. He can implement his Project 2025. The payoff was, Putin's going to let these guys do anything. Just give them Ukraine. And the wingnuts and the traitors and everything, they can do all their nutty stuff that they never would have been able to do before. Project 2025 is not something the country wants, but they're finding a way to force it on us. So I think it looks more and more like JD Vance could run. Now, would he be running as an incumbent who had to be bumped up from VP to president because Trump is unable to finish his term? Maybe that's another video. We look in those numbers. But right now, we're looking at a situation where Trump doesn't run again. He's not going to just toss the Constitution. He won't be. If he could, he would. If he wanted to. I think even if he wants to, I don't think they will let him at this point. I think that's the thing that's a little bit different from several months ago. So in the scenario where he finishes his term, it looks like JD Vance would be the nominee. So we'll look at another time what would happen if Trump is gone because Putin wants him gone, and they're going to push him out with the drip, drip, drip of more Epstein stuff, which is certainly a possibility. I would say even a likelihood. And I think it's something that he cannot survive. Again, he played ball when he found out that the Wall Street Journal was coming out with the first of a tranche, the first tranche of information from the Epstein files. He thought he could slow them down by pretending that he's got this, that he would be willing to resign for health reasons. That's why hours before the piece came out, but when he heard about it, he releases his health information. Now we know he'd been sick for 5 years. So this wasn't some new revelation. We knew that he'd been ill for a long time. So he did that for a strategic reason, not because he thought he had a right to know and this was somehow new. Anyway, that's a dance that's going on now, but just something to mull over. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments if you don't mind. Thanks.